When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With TwinSpires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with TwinSpires. And now you can race to victory with TwinSpires tournaments.
Welcome back to the TwinSpires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with Vance Hansen and our special guest today, Jason Beem, host of the Jason Beem Horse Racing Podcast with TwinSpires, also a race caller at Tampa Bay Downs. So had a very close-up look at the stakes action this weekend, including the Sam F. Davis, which we'll talk about, and other major stakes action across the country. We'll also mention what else caught our eye and maybe quickly talk some Risen Star at Fairgrounds this coming weekend. But before we dive in, Jason, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your bio. Tell us what all you do for TwinSpires and outside of TwinSpires.
Yeah, started doing the podcast first for Bet America back in 2016. I guess we just passed my 9-year mark, so coming up on a decade of it, which is crazy. But about a year and a half after that, moved over to TwinSpires and been doing it ever since. We do 4 days a week now, Monday through Thursday, and usually about 45-minute show. Guests a couple days a week. We'll recap the weekends on Mondays and preview the weekends on Thursdays. And it's been such a fun thing to do. We've kind of built this really neat community of folks who listen to the show. And, nice part for me about being an announcer is people can come out to the track and talk about the show or just talk jet racing in general. So it's been a very connective experience, I like to say.
Awesome. And you're from the Northwest, but now live in Florida.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I bought a house here, so this is home now. But the only part I'm not here is when I go up to Colonial, which starts July 1st and goes through mid-September. And so my mom loves to point out that I moved as far away from home as possible, at least domestically.
And it sounds like you're very, very busy. We will jump into our thoughts on the Sam F. Davis, but before we get into that, I wanted to mention we have Kentucky Derby Week tickets on sale right now at KentuckyDerby.com. And we also have Pool 4, the Kentucky Derby Future Wager, opening on Valentine's Day, Friday, and closing on Sunday. So be sure to check that out at KentuckyDerby.com as well. And Jason, I will turn it back to you to talk the Sam F. Davis and start with you on your thoughts with John Hancock getting that win and maybe any other horses that you thought left an impression.
Yeah, I was. He debuted at Tampa too just a few weeks ago, so it was kind of cool getting to see him start here and then continue on. And I'm guessing that's the last we'll see of him. I think Brad Cox already said they're going to wait a little while past Tampa Derby for his next prep. But his maiden win just couldn't have been easier. And this one he broke right on cue. I was a little against the horses coming out of the Pasco, Owen Almighty and Naughty Rascal and them. And Owen Almighty obviously ran huge in here, but. I don't know, John Hancock, you just tell the way he was traveling. At least early, I thought he was going to win, not easily, but he looked like a winner. And then he got passed in mid-stretch, as you'll see in the video here in a little bit. And I thought he was kind of done, but completely. It's funny. You can see there's a point where Owen Almighty gets about probably ahead, maybe a neck in front, and kind of looks to the left. And it's right then when John Hancock comes back at him and was kind of going away from him at the end. And, you take all the factors into consideration that this was only his second career start, first time going long, first time against winners, first time against stakes. I thought it was notable that Flavian Pratt took over the ride on a horse who just won a single maiden race. So we'd never seen Flavian in Tampa till last week, and he went 4 for 5 last week. And then this week had this win. So he's been enjoying it here in Oldsmar, but I thought it was a very good performance. I know the speed figures on some places came back a little low and others came back a little bit high. So our track has been playing really fast the last couple of weeks since the weather warmed up. We had a bit of a cold snap, and since the warming, the fractions have been a little hotter lately. And so, I know the speed figures that go strictly off time, they might be maybe a little bit different. And that's up for the viewer to talk about. A lot of people seem to think the track was really speed favoring on Saturday, but I think we're going to show some races later that say maybe that wasn't the case.
Yeah, John Hancock, he earned a 97 Brisnet speed figure if you go by Brisnet speed figures, which is definitely one of the higher ones of 3-year-olds so far this season. And I agree with you. He had a very impressive very brief re-rally since Owen Almighty poked his head in front for a second. But Vance, what were your thoughts on the Sam F. Davis?
Well, given the race's historically limited influence on the Derby, my bar was a bit low going in as far as personal expectations. And it turned into, I thought, what was a decent renewal, but not outstanding. I think John Hancock and Owen Almighty kind of benefited from the progressively slower fractions throughout the course of the race. But I am impressed that John Hancock, he was the least experienced member of the field, and he wound up turning back one of the more experienced and one of the more successful members of the field. Pretty game performance at the end. So I'll give those two horses credit. I'm not sure Owen Almighty or third place finisher Poster have made too much notable advancement from H2 to 3 yet, but I will cut Poster some slack in this race. He was trying to run from well off the pace, and I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt, given the way the race shaped up and the fact he was cutting back from 9 furlongs after winning the Remsen Stakes in his last start.
I don't think we mentioned it, but John Hancock, he finished a mile and a 16th in 1:42.27, which was the new stakes record for the, oh my gosh, I almost said Tampa Bay Derby. That is not.
Well, they're the same race, same distance, and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they don't change.
But the previous stakes record was Flame Away in 2018, and this final time was not far off the track record. It was about a half second off from what was set by Stanford back in 2017 in the Challenger Stakes. And again, this was the second career start for John Hancock. I thought a very impressive effort against winners and, first time 2 turns. So he's definitely one to watch for Brad Cox. And if you go off that pool for the Kentucky Derby future wager, he's 25-1. Same with Disco Time, also for Brad Cox's barn. And then Patch Adams is actually 30-1. He was a very popular pick last pool, but a little bit higher odds right now compared to his stablemates, which is interesting. Let's move over to some other stakes action. Vance, what were some of your takeaways from the other stakes action across the country?
I'll just bring up one, and that's the Suncoast Stakes at Tampa on Saturday, which was their Kentucky Oaks prep. Lacara bounced back from a disappointing effort in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies with this effort. The fact that she won the Suncoast wasn't a surprise, but the manner of her victory kind of was. She had shown speed in a couple of starts earlier in her career, including her dominating win at Saratoga, but she hadn't shown much speed in either of her last 2 starts. When she won the Pocahontas, and then in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies when she simply was not competitive and finished in mid-pack. But this was smart tactics on the part of the jockey for Lacara, sending her to the front. She outran second-time starter Chloe to the lead, and as you may have seen at the start there, the favorite in the race, Her Laugh, just completely blew the brakes. So that benefited Lacara. She eventually, as we'll see in a little while here, she eventually strolled home an easy winner by 6 1/4 lengths. And she looks like a filly on the rise for trainer Mark Casse. This race has produced in recent years horses like Nest, who went on to finish second in the Kentucky Oaks and was eventually champion 3-year-old filly. And last year, Power Squeeze came out of this race and wound up being a Grade 1 winner in the Alabama. So I wouldn't be completely shocked if the form of this edition was flattered as the year progresses.
You mentioned Her Laugh, who was the post-time favorite. I did think a decent second considering how far back she was, and then was able to at least rally to get up for second, still, more than 6 lengths back, but a very good rally on her part considering how bad of a break that was.
Yeah, I one thing I noticed when I thought I would maybe rush her up a little bit. He showed a lot of patience, I thought, on the first turn, not getting. I think he tried to give her the best chance to finish up. And with these points races now, I mean, second place points, obviously not for this particular part of the thing, mean a ton, but they do mean something. And I thought from just a tactical perspective, I thought Irad did a nice job of kind of keeping that horse and allowing her to run her best race. But I was focusing on her as she was kind of making that split at the top of the stretch, and all of a sudden you looked at Lacara and it was like, oh, she's gone.
Yep.
this is over.
Jason, what else stood out to you from the stakes action?
Nick Style was one who's just become a really, really cool horse. We've seen it a couple times here now. She's won 6 out of 7 in her career. That was certainly one effort. The other thing was I saw a lot of talk after the fact about, it was very good to be on the front end because those 2 races we saw were both front end victories. And Lacara was obviously very much helped by the fact that Her Laugh didn't get away, but this was one that certainly wasn't. I mean, Nick Style, you can see if they're going down the backstretch, is back second last and not even in the screen on the bottom part. And I thought the real cool part of this race was Dazzling Blue was 3 for 3 to start her career going gate to wire and has not gotten the lead since then. and has not won since then. Has hit the board every time and has hit the board in some big races. But I was so happy to see her get the lead, just because I wanted to see if that was really a big part of why she maybe wasn't winning. And she got beat here, but she ran very well. And you can see she put up some honest fractions. But look at what Nick Stile had to do. Was 3 and 4 wide coming around the turn here, and had to catch what's not a loose on the lead horse, but may as well have been. I mean, right here, Dazzling Blue's doing it pretty nicely, I thought. So this makes me wonder a little bit about the whole, the front end was totally the place to be. There was a couple other races where horses came from off the pace, but sometimes those horses that know how to win, man, they just find the wire. And this is a perfect example, because I didn't think she was going to win for a pretty good stretch of this race.
Yeah, and Dazzling Blue now on an eight loss streak. So
yeah,
that's
good
a
horse to
loss
have,
there.
though.
Looked really good, and then just beating a nose. Well, I will take it over to Turfway Park for some of the stakes action that caught my eye, and it was Holly Grove who got her stakes win in her second stakes effort, and it was the Valdale Stakes at 6.5 furlongs on the all-weather. This is a Whit Beckman trainee who won on debut at 5 furlongs at Churchill last May. She then was a 19-length 7th to Mohima, a very, very good Brad Cox filly. And that was coming off a long layoff for Holly Grove. She had gotten sick, had to go to the clinic with a lung infection, and then came back in that race, didn't have a very good day. But then in her third start, she was beaten just a half length in her stakes debut, and then stretching back out slightly at Turfway, finally got that win. Not sure what the long-term plans are, but she is a daughter of Moon and Stars out of Kentucky Derby winner Orb. So maybe one that will stretch back out, or stretch out to a route and then potentially be on the Oaks Trail. Obviously, Whit Beckman has a few others on the Oaks Trail right now. And I also wanted to mention, among 3-year-old males, Sand Devil remained unbeaten in his third career start. He won the 7 furlong Damon Runyon Stakes by a quarter length and had a 97 Brisnet speed figure, one of those top speed figures among 3-year-olds so far this season. And he faced New York bred rivals, now may go up in the Gotham Stakes next, and might be one that we see on the Derby Trail if he does well in the Gotham. And now we will broaden beyond the stakes action and talk what else caught our eyes. So, Jason, anything else that caught your eye this weekend?
There was a maiden race at Tampa early in the card that I thought it was for fillies and mares. I think it was just fillies. I'm trying to remember, but a couple of first-time starters that I thought showed really, really nice performances. Cassier was the winner, who was a first-timer drawn on the outside. I believe it was for Shug. And She's a Gemma, who was the 8 horse in this race, also ran great. You can see at the start there, She's a Gemma's back second last at this point. And I talked to CJ Johnson, who's part of the CJ Thoroughbreds, who owns She's a Gemma, before the race, and he had said, they'd had a couple of setbacks and stuff, but they were pretty high on her. And I just thought she made a really, really nice turn of foot. They kind of reeled in Salted, who's sitting second right now, the gray, who was one of the favorites in the race. And just visually to me, I thought a good race. What's interesting too is Cassier, like about the 16th pole, it looks like She's a Gemma's going to go by her as kind of the main danger to Salted. Then all of a sudden Cassier just keeps going and kind of sticks her head out there. And so to me, I just thought those top 2 showed some really good prowess, and they came back with good speed figures for that level, and since they were both debut horses, just thinking there might be a fair bit to come forward. But you'll see Cassier's first over right now and under a ride. And, as an announcer, I'm kind of looking, I'm trying to get a gauge on everybody, but you can only look at one horse at a time, and you're looking at the jockeys too, right? To know who's who. And, right here, I still don't think Cassier's going, because now it looks like the 8 has more momentum, or the 3 might hold on. And then the next thing you know, Cassier just kind of digs in and just won't go away. Like I did not think she was the winner out of that group. And then all of a sudden, noses down.
That's got to be so tough. What kind of prep do you do, or would you say improv skills? What helps you with situations like that?
Memorization is the most important part. I color my program every day, and just when they're warming up, you try. I look at them the night before, obviously, and look at my British PPs at home, and to get just a sense of the race. But for the actual silks colors, like, you just have to kind of jam into your brain. And what's tough about big days, especially for Tampa, is usually it's a lot of horses we don't normally see. So it's a lot of new names. Even the Sam F. Davis, like, there was a few that had been here before, but a lot who hadn't. So that's also tricky. Tampa, they saved my bacon though, because they have the color coded caps, and our booth is really low. I'm only on the 3rd floor. Like Travis at Churchill, you guys I'm sure have been up there. I mean, he's in like a skyscraper, so it's a way different view, because he can see kind of down and behind horses, whereas I can't. They're almost flat, and so those caps saved me an awful lot. I heard Larry Colmus one day was like, we got to get rid of those guys. I said, if you get rid of those caps, we're gonna have a beef, buddy, because they help me quite often.
I was going to say, I meant to say it earlier, your call at the finish of the Sam F. Davis. I liked the scientist
Oh yeah.
name to a Sam F. Davis for John Hancock. Did you have something planned for every single horse just in case?
I had a few, and I'm not a big planner. I think sometimes when you do that, you trip yourself up because you start thinking about like, okay, what am I going to say versus just calling the race. And so I had thought about it because to me it was the most obvious thing to say, and I had thought about it for his maiden race, and I was just like, I don't want to give a first time maiden some kind of corny call or whatever. But sometimes big races, like it's such a wider audience, and a lot of times people who are very casual fans, and I just thought some people might get a kick out of that. And
Yeah.
so it's, and plus it then takes it away from any other announcers that want to use that line, and I'm sure some of them are probably a little bit
You
mad
got
too.
it there first.
Yep, you got to claim it first. That's right.
Vance, what else caught your eye from the weekend?
Well, I'll mention that the racing world lost one of its most notable and most successful patrons last week when the fourth Aga Khan passed away in Portugal at the age of 87. He was a third generation owner breeder and one of the most dominant forces in European racing over the last half century. Although he didn't run many horses in the U.S. over the years, he did win the Breeders' Cup Turf 3 times, most recently in 2020 with Tarnawa, who won at Keeneland. He also captured the inaugural edition of the Breeders' Cup Turf at Hollywood Park with 53-1 long shot Lashkari in 1984, and he also won the race in 2000 with Kalanisi. The Aga Khan won the Epsom Derby 5 times, most famously with the ill-fated Shergar, who, of course, they made a movie out of him. He won cantering by a record margin of 10 lengths. And he also won the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe 4 times, including with the brilliant undefeated filly Zarkava. But to me, my all-time favorite Aga Khan horse was Sindar, seen here winning the Arc in 2000. While a 1.25 mile specialist, Giant's Causeway was the darling of the racing media in Europe and America that year. Sindar, to me, was truly the outstanding 3-year-old of that season. He became the first horse ever to sweep the Epsom Derby, Irish Derby, and the Arc de Triomphe, and he still is the only horse to win all 3 races. At Epsom, he defeated future Arc winner and Breeders' Cup Classic runner-up Saki, as well as the favorite Beat Hollow, and Beat Hollow came over to America the next season and won 3 Grade 1s, the Manhattan, the Turf Classic at Churchill Downs, and the Arlington Million. My memory was failing me there for a minute. So Sindar won a vintage renewal of the Epsom Derby that year. And when he got to the end of the season and his final career start at the Arc, he dominated over the previous year's Arc winner, Manchu. So salute Aga Khan. I think his stable is expected to continue through various other family members, but he personally will be missed in the world's winner's circles.
Big loss in horse racing. And you mentioned Shergar. We have a story on TwinSpires Edge by Jennifer Kelly kind of explaining the history behind that horse. A very fascinating and very unfortunate story, but certainly worth a read if you don't know about the background there.
Absolutely.
And for me, I will take it back to some 3-year-olds that caught my eye. And there was a Vekoma 3-year-old colloquial who broke his maiden in noteworthy fashion at Aqueduct on Friday and had a 109 brisnet speed figure, the highest of any 3-year-old this season so far. He won by 7 lengths in a 6.5 furlong maiden special weight. And this 109 surpasses the 101 that Burnham Square got in the Holy Bull. Captain Cook had a 100 in the Withers last week. So for him to jump right on the page with a 109 is huge. He also, his debut, he was beaten just a nose by Minty, a full brother to Fierceness, who set a record for 5 furlongs back in June at Belmont at the Big A. So this is a very fast horse, but he's out of a dam by Bernardini, so stamina could be there in his pedigree, but his connections already said he's sticking to 1-turn distances for now, and the Woody Stevens is a mid-year target, but certainly potentially a sprinter or a miler to watch as a 3-year-old right now, because that kind of speed figure, I mean, that's good for even older horses that are sprinting. A 109 is very impressive. And then I guess we'll close out real quickly too with some Risen Star talk, because Saturday we have a 14 race card at Fairgrounds, and New Orleans is busy. They just had the Super Bowl Sunday. Now we've got the Risen Star, and Mardi Gras is going to be happening. I believe some celebrations, and TwinSpires will be down at Fairgrounds this weekend for on-site coverage. But Let's see, Vance, do you have any thoughts on the card? Anything that stood out to you or the Risen Star in general?
Yeah, I was just looking at this through this race right before we came on the air, and if East Avenue bounces back off of his poor effort in the Breeders' Cup, I think he's going to be very difficult to beat. I was very impressed with his first two starts last summer and fall, especially that dominating win in the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland. So he's obviously the horse to beat here, and the other feature on Saturday, the Rachel Alexander, Good Cheer, another horse for Godolphin. She's going to be a very heavy favorite, and she was as equally as impressive in her division last fall. Climax with a victory in the Goldenrod. So she's a very exciting Kentucky Oaks prospect, and I'm very interested to see how East Avenue bounces back off that poor effort at Del Mar last fall.
Jason, I know you're very busy with Tampa, but did you have a chance to look at the card yet?
I did, yeah. I'm interviewing Cherie DeVoe for my podcast tomorrow. So I was looking.
Awesome.
She's got a bunch of firsters on that card that we'll talk about. But I wanted to talk about a horse who last raced at Tampa that's in the Risen Star, and that's Vassimo. Pletcher has done this move pretty much every year since I've been at Tampa. He'll have a real good maiden special weight winner at Gulfstream. He'll run them in a early February, late January optional claimer. They'll win, and then he'll go. Emmanuel's one. He did that with a few years ago. Always Dreaming several years ago, and obviously went on to win the Kentucky Derby. So Vassimo, I thought was very professional looking in the win. It wasn't the super fast win or big number win, but horse really done nothing wrong. And the fact that Irad goes and shows up, I mean, obviously he's got other mounts on the card as well. But I don't know. I thought an interesting one, but it didn't wow me as like Emmanuel. I remember after he ran there, I was like, that's a racehorse, and so we'll see if Vassimo can take that next step forward.
Speaking of Pletcher, Tuscan Sky was a horse that I saw at Fairgrounds last year that I thought had a lot of promise and thought might show up on the Derby Trail and get some points, but it just didn't pan out. But now he's going to be on the same card, but racing in, let's see, is it the Mine Shaft? Is that the right? Yeah, it's the Grade 3 Mine Shaft. And that's the race right before the Rachel and the Risen Star. This is a bunch of 4-year-olds and older, but a lot of 4-year-olds in this race that were on the Derby Trail. You have Catching Freedom, who was the winner of last year's Louisiana Derby. Tuscan Sky, as I mentioned, who I think might be a little bit better as a 4-year-old. He's by Vino Rosso, and the progeny, they age like fine wine, just like Vino Rosso. Hall of Fame for Steve Asmussen. He's coming off a big win at Fairgrounds, and then you got Batten Down, Maycox Bay. And then we also have a 5-year-old in the field. It's Kamorabino. I don't know if I can say this one. Omoide? Maybe that's how you say it. But this is a Japanese horse that's been racing over here and one to watch as well. But a very good field, I thought, for the Grade 3 Mine Shaft.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And Catching Freedom was my top selection for the Derby last year. So it's good to see him back on the trail, and we'll see if he improves much as a 4-year-old.
Well, I think that's all the time we have today for the Racing Roundtable. Jason, thank you for joining us. It was definitely fun to have you as a guest.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks so much.
And again, we have those tickets on sale for Derby Week at KentuckyDerby.com. And yeah, TwinSpires will be down at Fairgrounds this weekend. So be sure to check our social channels for a whole lot of trainer interviews, some walk and talk, post-race interviews, and head to KentuckyDerby.com for that future wager as well. We'll see you next time.
When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With TwinSpires, you can place your bets with confidence. Whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with TwinSpires. And now you can race to victory with TwinSpires tournaments.